here to tell you the number one mistake that most people make when they're trying to recover from an injury. I'm gonna cut to the chase. It's usually not sufficiently loading your body as you're recovering. What do I mean by loading? Loading is just exposing your body to different forces. So in the context of physiotherapy, it could be applying an extra weight, or it could mean jumping, it could be doing strength exercises, or it could be loading your body by stretching your muscles. So when your body undergoes these different forces, ideally it adapts and responds and gets stronger and more resilient. However, if we go through an injury where maybe we are resting more or taking it easy to let things calm down, sometimes our body actually gets less tolerant to load. And then in order to make a full recovery, we have to build that load tolerance back up again. So if we don't sufficiently load our bodies in our injury recovery process, we might lead ourselves to believe that we're fully recovered when we're not, in fact, fully recovered. Let's go through an example of this. So let's take our example of Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith has been having about 6 months of knee pain. He is a mostly sedentary person, and he ends up heading on into physiotherapy to help manage his pain. He starts physiotherapy, they do some basic stretching, movement exercises, maybe they even get into a little bit of squatting, which is great. They're doing some pain management strategies, maybe like heat or ice or acupuncture or massage, and everything's coming along and it's improving. And he's getting the point where he's pretty pain-free day to day. So because he's feeling pretty pain-free, he thinks, I'm done physio, I'm good to go. And off he goes, and even though the physiotherapist recommends continuing exercises, maybe he feels like, I'm good enough, I'm okay, I'm gonna stop doing the exercise program. So after a few months of physio, he's feeling great, maybe even a few more months pass by, and then let's say his son is like, hey, come play basketball with me. And then suddenly he starts loading his knee more than he's used to, and that pain returns. So what happened? Sometimes when our body gets exposed to a certain amount of load from an exercise program, for example, where we're doing some squats and doing some things that are a little bit harder than what we were doing previously, your body will adapt and will get better and will recover. That being said, if we don't prepare our body for things that are even harder than that, then we're just not prepared to play basketball. So in order to be prepared to play basketball, we probably need a longer period of loading so that our body has time to adapt and exposing our body to higher loads. So for example, Mr. Smith might need to do a little bit of like weighted resistance exercises, maybe some lunging, maybe he actually needs to try a little bit of jumping to get a more high intensity load going before he goes into a sport like basketball. So just because you're feeling pain-free doesn't mean the knee is good to go for any sport you could possibly imagine. It would be like if you were to have an injury and then you were feeling fine and then the next day you decided to run a marathon. Your body's just not ready for that. So when you're looking at recovering from your injury, not only do we want you to get to a pain-free spot where you're feeling great with your day-to-day activities, but we also might want to be considering, what do you want to do in the future? Are you going to want to play sports? Are you going to want to play with your grandchildren? So those types of activities might require a little bit of extra loading and longer term work to make sure that you're getting to where you want to be and ideally can prevent these sorts of injuries from happening again and again and again. So how can you appropriately manage your load when you're experiencing an injury or when you're even healthy? Let's go through a graphic that's going to help us walk through this concept. So on the screen, you're going to see that your tissues are in the gray box, and this could be things like tendons in your body, bones in your body, ligaments in your body, muscles. There's lots of different tissues, and all of those tissues will have a different load tolerance. To get more in detail on how much load each tissue can handle and recovery times, that's where heading into a physiotherapist can be very helpful to address your particular issue. But as a general concept, all of your tissues will have a certain amount of loading that will be optimal for them, where you make them work and make them do things, and that will result in tissue adaptation. The tissue adaptation will usually result in getting stronger, being able to tolerate more load, and that's how you increase or maintain their load capacity. So some of the changes that would be seen for a bone, for example, is a higher bone mineral density. For a tendon, we might actually see that the tendon gets stiffer and stronger. For muscles, we might see that your muscle strength is increasing or that your muscle size is increasing. And those would all be really great ways to modify your load to actually improve your body. Now, what happens when our load goes a little bit wrong? So if we look at the red side on the right aspect of the graphic, if we don't have enough loading to our body, let's say we're sick, we're going through a long period of time where we're sedentary and not exercising, maybe we have a desk job but we're not doing any exercise outside of that, then that can result in our tissues getting a little bit weaker because they aren't having that regular load to get them to adapt. So as a result, they actually get less strong, and that results in a reduced load capacity, meaning in the future they'll be able to handle less load comfortably. And what can happen is if we have either normal loads or even if we have excessive loads, like Mr. Smith when he went to play basketball, that can result in a potential injury or having pain. Now, this won't always happen. So some people are sedentary and do okay for a while. But in general, most people, if they're not loading their bodies, they will put themselves at an increased risk for injury and pain. Then after you get an injury or pain, that unfortunately results in tissue maladaptation. And this can result in other changes in the tissue that are, as a result, going to further reduce your load capacity. And that seems like where you can be spiraling out of control and feeling like you're getting worse and worse and worse because it's so painful and the tissue can't handle as much and they're getting worse. So how do we fix that problem? So when you have reduced load capacity, you can't do very much. What do? You actually want to go to an appropriate modified load. Now that load might not be as much as you were able to do when you were younger, but if you start exposing your body gently to an increased load by maybe doing some stretches or by doing some light strengthening exercises, you can get yourself back onto the left side of the diagram where you're actually optimally loading your tissues, and your tissues are now positively adapting to that load, and then you increase and maintain your load capacity. And for an injury, we want to see an increase in the load capacity. Once you're able to get that optimal loading long enough to get you back to where you need to be able to handle your everyday activities and everything that you want to be doing, then you hopefully will be feeling pretty good. So as a conclusion, our bodies are forever changing to the loads that we put on them. So when you have an injury, it's a great idea to pull back your loading to let things calm down, but don't forget to load that back up again. And when you do get to the point that you're feeling pretty good, we would always recommend continue loading your body on a regular basis to make sure that your body is staying strong, healthy, and pain-free in the future.